is Ruby and Lewis, and I am going to talk to you this morning about microaggression training. Why your company needs it, why your companies need it, and how it helps. Um, and today, we're just going to give a small presentation. It's not going to take no more than 15-20 minutes to talk about this. Okay? So, the first thing, fact or fiction. Discrimination is only practiced by a small set of ignorant people. Discrimination is only practiced by a small set of ignorant people. Is that fact or fiction? That is fiction. Research shows that everyone, males and females alike, perceive and treat women differently from men. They also perceive and treat underrepresented groups differently from the dominant culture group. Research shows that a great majority, males and females alike, have implicit unconscious associations that can influence their responses to situations and their decisions. So, M. Banaji said, even the most well-intentioned person unwillingly allows unconscious thoughts and feelings to influence apparently objective decisions. Okay? So even the most well-intentioned person can do this. So, we're going to talk about companies. Companies doing microaggressions and discrimination. Companies can be sued for discrimination of all kinds, harassment of all kinds, racism, sexism, and so much more. Okay? Companies who have been sued these include General Electric, Southern California Edison, Walmart stores, Abercrombie and Fitch, Denny Restaurants, BMW, Louis Vuitton, United Parcel Services, Tiffany and Company, Coca-Cola Company, Comcast, and Kaiser Permanente. And there's a couple of links that you can look up in order to as my references and to look this information up. And these are just the start of companies who have been sued. There are probably a lot more. Okay, so resources and handouts that I include with this microaggression training include Black students on daily campus microaggressions. It's exhausting. Management lessons from Sony's gender pay gap. How corporate America is tackling unconscious bias. Cross-ethnic friendships in urban middle schools makes youths feel less vulnerable and safer. Okay, these are when I do an in-person training. These are some handouts that I include. Okay, the benefits of diversity. So diversity powers innovations. They did a study for diversity on juries, and these are some of the information that it actually had. It's more information exchange. It took longer, but it discussed more case facts, discussed more missing evidence. It was more accurate, fewer inaccurate statements, fewer uncorrected inaccuracies, more openness to discussing race, discussed more race-related topics. There were fewer objections to considering race. And there is a link, where I got my source from as well. So, the analysis supported the prediction that diverse groups would exchange a wider range of information than all white groups. So this finding was attributed to the performance of not just black participants, but as whites cited more case facts, made fewer errors, and were more amenable to discussion on race when in diverse groups versus all white groups. Even before discussion, whites and diverse groups were more lenient toward the black defendant, demonstrating that the effects of diversity do not occur solely through information exchange. So, it was diverse groups make things a lot better, okay? And there's some information. So, benefits of diversity in schools. So, students work better. They feel safer. Students trust their learning environment more. Students are more confident. Students have less prejudice against teachers and staff and peers. It improves student achievement and it fosters creativity. Okay, and there are some resources at the bottom. There's 3 links that you can actually check my facts. Okay, now I'm going to talk a little bit about the difference between diversity training and the difference between microaggression training. I've heard a lot of staff members and teachers and all kinds of people in corporate America who have said, oh, I've had diversity training. I don't need microaggression training. I know what microaggression training is. And when I ask them what microaggression training is, they don't get it right. So what I'm going to do for the next couple of slides is I'm going to show the difference between diversity training and microaggression training. So diversity training, very broad and very basic. So diversity training is completely different than microaggression training. Diversity training strongly enhances people's knowledge about other groups. It also affects people's beliefs and how they behave toward others. But this effect fades over time. A Harvard Business Review study found that improperly designed and delivered diversity training may actually create less diverse organizations. And we are seeing this a lot in the Pacific Northwest. In the Pacific Northwest, when you walk into any organization, majority of the time you will not see a wide range of diverse populations. The same study found that people resist mandatory training, and that undermines the goals of the session, no matter how worthwhile and business critical. And there's a link down at the bottom where you can actually check these facts. Okay, so much of this type of training, which is diversity training, is incredibly outdated. It may address more overt forms of harassment and discrimination, but these aren't necessarily the realities of what people face in the workplace. Proper training must reflect the current workplace environment. So if you have an all-white organization, which is majority over 90% white, or if you have an all-male organization, which is over 90% male or testosterone, then you're not going to reflect the current workplace environment, because majority of the workplace is going to be of one dominant group. It's not going to reflect anyone who is trying to get hired into that group who does not fit that dominant group. So whatever the dominant group is, you need to have a more wide range of training, which does not include diversity training, because it will not work. Okay? So, microaggression training, is very important to note again that microaggression training is totally different than diversity training. Microaggression training is more detailed. It's self-reflected. Let me repeat that again. It's more detailed than diversity training, and it's self-reflected. It requires honest self-reflection and a willingness to accept feedback. Okay? It requires a willingness to disclose truth about your own values, beliefs, and behaviors. It's hard work throughout the training, and there's no slacking off. When I teach microaggression training, this isn't a bird course. You do get graded on your microaggression training. There is not just, oh, I took the training and now I'm not going to be able to apply it, or I'm not going to remember it, or whatever. No, you get graded on the training, and so you will have to do the work. I will not just allow people to just slack off, because as we will see in the upcoming slides, that there are certain things that are extremely important because they're 30% of your grade. Microaggression training forces individuals to look at their own biases. It focuses on building both awareness about biases and skills for interaction. It helps individuals understand and gain tools on how to not implement those biases onto others. It helps individuals gain empathy and compassion toward others, and it helps lead to incremental changes and more recognition of problems that may exist. Proper and required training. Again, diversity training is not the same as microaggression training. You cannot get the same things from a diversity training that you get from a microaggression training. The two are totally separate. So proper and required training promotes adequate and correct knowledge and understanding. It forces staff to look into their own biases that they may not be aware of. Again, forces staff to look into their own biases that they may not be aware of. A person who says, oh, I was raised up around sisters. I have a whole bunch of sisters. That is not the same thing as, not spewing gender biases from their mouth, because they may not be aware that they're spewing biases from their mouth. But because they were raised around a group of girls, they may have a whole bunch of set of biases. Another one, a person who says, oh, I got black friends, I'm not racist. They may actually have biases that are spewed from their mouth all the time. And that's why that's important. Forces staff to look into their own biases that they may not be aware of. It helps staff communicate with students more effectively. It helps staff be able to deal with diverse populations. It fosters awareness and uncovers denials for all parties involved. It gives tools to help with the trauma of previous microaggressions. Let me repeat that again. It gives tools to help with the trauma of previous microaggressions. Not only previous microaggressions, but it also helps to minimize microaggressions or any kind of things that biases that people say going forward, people say or do. Again, nonverbal communication is still communication, and it can still be a microaggression. Okay? So, the Fortune 500 Chen. There are a whole bunch of Fortune 500 companies who are now realizing that microaggression training is extremely important. Implicit bias training is currently in vogue as so many companies from Coca-Cola, Facebook, Airbnb, and Pinterest to Google and the Royal Bank of Colombia. There are so many Fortune 500 companies who are realizing that this training is really, really important, and it can help companies grow to a whole nother advantage. Okay, the microaggression training that I teach. This is what we're going to talk about. My microaggression training objectives. This is what you will learn in my microaggression training. Upon completion of my training, you should be able to define what a microaggression is, identify 5 examples of microaggressions from at least 3 different categories, identify at least 5 ways that microaggressions hinder or harm children in school, identify at least 5 ways that microaggressions hinder or harm employees in the workplace, explain how white privilege plays a part in microaggressions, explain how systemic racism has an impact on microaggressions, describe ways in which each person can help prevent microaggressions, and apply and explain the 4R conceptual framework to racial and gender microaggressions. These are objectives that you should be able to know when you finish my course. And on top of that, when you finish my course, on top of all knowing this, you will receive a grade. And if you pass my course, you will also receive a microaggression certificate with an embossed stamp that says you completed microaggression training. Okay? So, there are 2 different types of training that I want you to be aware of. There's 1-week training and there's 2-day training. The first one we're going to talk about is the 1-week training. So, for my 1-week training, as you can see, day 1, we go into the welcome, and we also have, immediately, you have a homework assignment. Automatically off the bat, you have a homework assignment. There are 3 group activities. It is important to note that participation is part of your grade, but also the group activities are also part of your grade. Day 2, you hand in your homework assignments. You discuss the homework assignments. We go over a MAT official PowerPoint. I do have a microaggression training official PowerPoint, and it has 51 slides. That's how many slides it has. 51 slides. So there's a lot to cover when it comes to microaggressions. It's not just a little bit. Like I said, it's not just a bird course that can be done within 1 hour. Okay? So there's videos, then there's quizzes. There's videos, then there's more quizzes. You understand? So my whole training, you will have quizzes and tests and stuff like that throughout the training to gain more awareness. And there's a lot of group activities. You just can't come one day and not come the next day, because you might miss something and you will be affecting your group. Day 3. It is important to note on day 3 for the 1-week training that on there you will see it says group activity game. And then it says video with handout and then a classwork group assignment. That group assignment is 30% of your grade. Okay? Not of the classwork's grade. It is 30% of your individual grade. That is a huge, huge group assignment. It's important to note that this microaggression training outline is what I do, but I don't show you the titles of what you're actually doing until you actually get to the training. And that game that I have created for microaggression is extremely important. It is 30% of your individual grade. Okay? Then on day 4, you will have more homework assignments. We'll go over more PowerPoints. You will have another group activity. Day 5, we'll finish up with the classwork. There is an in-class paper. Okay? In-class paper that has to be turned in. In-class paper. You will also go over previous assessments and previous homeworks, previous homework assignments, and then we'll do a microaggression test and a survey. Okay? So it is important to know that this is the 1 week training. The 1 week training goes for 5 days, Monday through Friday. Okay, or it can go Tuesday through whatever. But that is the 1 week training. Then we have the 2-day training. Now, it is important to note that when you look at the day 1 and day 2 of the 2-day training, it is completely different from the 5-day training because you no longer have homework assignments. You actually have in-class assignments. And those in-class assignments are required to have computers, access to computers, and printers, because you will need to print something that is that you're going to be doing in class. Okay. It is also important to note. Remember that game that you saw on the 1 week training? It's on day 2, and that game, which includes the classwork group assignment, is 30% of your grade. Okay, cannot stress that enough. 30% of your grade. So and it's very, very important. Okay. The 2-day training is more intense because you're cramming more stuff into 2 days versus 1 week. And so that's why the 2-day training is more expensive. Now, let's talk about the training costs. The training costs for microaggression training. Nonprofit or public schools, okay? Nonprofit public schools, 5-day training is $3,500, which is $700 a day. 2-day training is $2,500, which is $1,250 a day. Okay? Now, the thing with nonprofit public schools, the training is there is no maximum to the amount of people who can be in that training. But there is a requirement that if there is 400 people in one training, that they have to be able to move around the space that they're in, and they have to be able to get into groups at tables. Okay? That is extremely important. If you want to have 1,000 people per training, that's fine. But you have to be able to get into groups, and you have to be able to move around within the training space. Okay, that is extremely important. This is not just a conference where I sit up here at the top and I'm facilitating and I'm talking the whole time. No, this is a training where you actually have to be involved. Okay. Same with the for-profit. For-profit is 5 days, is $4,000, which is $800 a day. 2 days is $2,500, which is $1,500 per day. So for-profit and non-profit public schools, there is no maximum to the amount of training that you can have, but you have to the amount of people you can have in that training, but you have to be able to move around in those groups. Individual training. I do teach individual training, but it's your responsibility to get 12 people. I do a minimum of 12 people because of the simple fact that you have to be able to get in groups. So with 12 people, there will be 2 groups of 6. So there is a minimum of 12 people for individual trainings. Okay? Individual trainings for 5 days, that's $50 per person per day. That's minimum of 12 people. $50 per person per day. Okay? 2 days is $100 per person per day. Okay? And I cannot stress enough that there is a minimum of 12 people for the individual training. Okay? Out-of-town required fees. Out-of-town required fees are required for anybody who is, or any company, any individual or any company who is located 60 miles from Vancouver, Washington. And I have a sample contract that goes with that. Again, 60 miles away from Vancouver, Washington. 60 miles plus. Okay? You are required to pay out-of-town fees. That means lodging for me, the facilitator, which is motel, hotel, short-term, religious, etc. It can be smart travel, ditch hotel, 10 cheaper ways to stay. I gave the link at the bottom. Round trip transportation. If you are located in Alaska or Hawaii or wherever, then you are required to pay for round trip transportation to and from Vancouver, Washington. For me, the facilitator. Normal and customary ground transportation if applicable. Now this is important because it's only if applicable, meaning that the training and the lodging site can be the same site and that would not apply. So for some companies, they have the training inside of a hotel or a conference, area, whatever. And those conference areas have lodging inside of there. So the ground, normal and customary ground transportation would not be applicable to this situation. Okay. And transportation to and from training site. So that's what I would mean. To and from training site, and the training and lodging site can be the same site. So that is it for the online presentation for the microaggression training. Questions and comments. Thank you for watching this presentation. You can give me a call at 360-721-6346. Again, that's 360-721-6346 if you have any questions or comments. You can also email me at I as in igloo, N as in Nancy, F as in foxtrot, O as in Oscar, period. U as in umbrella, C as in cat, C as in cat, P as in papa, at gmail.com. Again, that's I as in igloo, N as in Nancy, F as in foxtrot, O as in Oscar, period. U as in umbrella, C as in cat, C as in cat, P as in papa. You can email me, or you can give me a call for any questions or comments that you may have, or to sign up for a microaggression training. Thank you for watching this presentation, and I hope you have a great day.